to all the dispossessed youth of Africa, for perpetuation of communion with ancestral spirits through the fight for African freedom, and in the firm faith that the dead, the living, and the unborn will unite to build the destroyed shrines. Selah. Hello and welcome, beloveds, to another episode of Wake Up Africa. My name is Dr. Mumbi Seraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray that you are well in all your ways and that you're moving into living life truly on your own terms, that you've gotten into position, even if it's just mentally and spiritually, beloveds. At least if you've gotten into, spiritual and mental position, it will really save you in 2022, which is going to be such an epic year. Maybe I'll do another show on what is expected from that. But there's a story that was shared with me with one of my Patreon family. Special shout out to our Patreon family. Thank you so much for supporting us throughout the year. And she's called, The In-Between. And basically, it talks about how the divided kingdom has refused to return sacred religious tablets to Ethiopia. And they said the best they could do was to loan them for an extended period of time. They gave all these legalities. I'll even get into a bit of the story later on. But beloveds, the reason I share this is I want you to recognize that the world is being run by black magic. I mean, I hate to call it black. We should even call it, because it is our magic that's literally being used against us, our lowest level magic. The rituals that our ancestors came in, the methods that they discovered, because they did rituals generation after generation until that ritual became a key. The ascended ones, the chiefs, they'd hold on to these special, what are they called? Scepters and, walking sticks and everything, instruments of power, boudoirs that would give these things power, and it would go generation to generation, and they would add their energy to that. And so these things became easier ways for those who came after them to unlock certain doors, certain gates of this reality, to move in certain, magical abilities. And it was like that was the gift, beloveds. Well, the majority of our gifts, over 90% of our artifacts are still in, museums and universities across Europe. And it's not because they want to display them, but it's because a lot of the magic that is within them has to be, was kind of frozen or held up so that they could now bring in their own energy and system. And sometimes they even manipulated our own. It's no secret that the Masonic Brotherhood, most of the things they use are from the secret knowledge that was in the mystic schools in Egypt. Stories for other days. But now get this, beloved. So the British basically seized these plaques after defeating Emperor Theodorus II. And I've talked about him before. This is the one who they even cut his hair. Beloveds, they're not telling us the truth, but he was the highest level mystic man. And in his possession were very powerful instruments of power. I know, double whatever, but very powerful instruments. I mean, they even took his head, so you can imagine the level of vibration he had. I'm sure they took his head because they've tried to clone him several times since then. Anyway, so so they seized these tablets actually from him, and and they've kept them. And so the Ethiopian government, who has been on this crusade to get back all their sacred texts, their sacred scriptures, their sacred tablets, their sacred tablets, they actually approached the divided kingdom and asked for these things back, beloveds. And the interesting thing is, the British they actually refused. The museum trustees said the law prohibits them from returning these items. They said, we believe that today the British Museum has a unique opportunity to build a lasting and meaningful bridge of friendship. This was like the Ethiopians, what they were saying between Britain and Ethiopia by handing the tablets back to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which is the foundation of the Christianity that many follow, but it was hijacked, beloveds. Anyway, those maybe that's something I'll get into. So basically, these 11 tablets, which are basically altar tablets, who knows what they really are on the deeper level, and they're of huge, spiritual significance to the Ethiopians, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church actually believes the tablets are the dwelling place of God on earth, or the Ark of the Covenant. Let that sink in. So obviously there's a spiritual being or a God that manifested in our reality, the one we're living in right now. And their lasting gift was to put their energy, because you can put your energy into things, beloveds. You're a spiritually vibrating force. You're a creator, so you can actually if you reach the highest level, you can animate things. Or even if it's not to animate them, you can put energy in them. And that energy will be felt for generations to come. So they believe that these tablets have the energy of God. And get this, beloveds, the British government, this British museum, doesn't even have these on display. There's no even picture of them. So that's why the Ethiopian government was like, hey, can we get our things back? And they were like, no, sorry, we can't give them to you. The most we could do was loan them to you. I mean, do you think they'd even loan the real thing? Beloved, the world is being run on our magic. And if you listen to this story with discernment, you will see it so clearly. It's so obvious. They don't have them on display. They have no image of them, no mention of them, no picture of them. And yet they won't give them back? It doesn't even make sense. And they quote, some British Museum Act of 1963 blocks them from permanently returning these particular items. But they would, but the Ethiopian government was arguing like, you don't even use them. And by the way, the priests use the tablets to sanctify and consecrate church buildings, to bring that energy, to bring that otherworldly energy into it. And they're supposed to be kept in a public place away from, in a private place away from the public, which is exactly what whoever has them. You really think it's the British Museum? You don't think some wizards are using it? Beloveds, the world is being run on our magic. But the people who gave these things power, the spiritual beings that gave these things power, so that they would rule and reign forever and give our people a higher position, they're back in physicality. So these things, and the real thing is higher than anything you put energy into. So we will be creating our new instruments of power in this and generations to come as we achieve certain levels of ascension. We will be rebuilding our shrines. We will be rebuilding our temples. And these things will be null and void. But the other interesting thing is that the soul that was put in these things, our instruments of power, are crying to come home. And best believe that having them and keeping them, because now the ancients are back. The ancients who created these instruments of power are back. And these instruments of power will naturally want to go back to their source. So it will actually do more harm than good for Babylon to try and hold on to these things, because now they're literally null and void unless they're in the hands of those who created them, who walk among us. Tuko pamoja.